What's going on, guys? We have a review today that I'm kind of excited for. We're doing Cigar City Brewing out of Tampa, Florida. I don't know much about Cigar City Brewing. I don't know how big they are. I know all signs point to Cigar City Brewing having decent distribution. At least where I'm from in Alabama, we get a decent amount of Cigar City Brewing, at least their flagships anyways. I know their JLI, I think it's called, their IPA is pretty acclaimed, I guess, in the area. It seems to sell well. This is their Florida Cracker. It's their Belgian wit beer, or white ale, whatever you prefer to call it. And they call it the Florida Cracker. It gets its name from the whip Irish descendants used to herd cattle when they arrived in Florida when the Spanish sold their land to the English. And there's like a whole deal on the website. It's pretty interesting. It deals with the 18th century Irish settlers that came to Florida. I don't know, I'm paraphrasing. There's a whole big spiel on it. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, the name comes from the whip the Irish settlers used, to crack that whip and herd the cattle, or what have you. If you haven't watched much of my channel, or I don't even know if I've mentioned it, but this style, the wit beer or the Belgian white ale, whatever you prefer to call it, is my favorite style of beer. I know it's not as complex and as interesting as a stout or an IPA, and I know it's not as balanced as, a traditional ale, but personally I like sweeter beers, and white ale does it perfect without it being candy sweet, in my opinion. I just love the meld of wheat and orange and coriander that you usually find in a wit beer. Those are the staple items, is your wheat and your coriander and your orange peel. Now everybody has their own variant, obviously. Everybody wants to make beer their own. I know Sam Adams used to put plum in their Cold Snap, which was their wit beer for the spring. They also have a White Christmas, that's a wit beer, and they put cooking spices in it. I had a Stone Wit, and that was tangerine and lime, I believe. They put in their wit beer. I've reviewed the New Belgium white ale. They made their own version, of course, and now we're doing a Cigar City Brewing. We'll see how it stacks up. So yeah, it's definitely on the paler side. Definitely on the paler side. It's definitely hazy. I read in the description they use an unfiltered wheat. So maybe that's where the sediment's coming from. Or no, not unfiltered, an unhusked wheat, I think is what I read. So there's definitely sediment floating around in here. So if you get this beer, don't think that you spilled something in your beer. It seems to be a fairly active beer, although it's quite cloudy. It's one of the most cloudy wit beers I think I've ever seen. Head dissipation is pretty decent. Excuse me, not head dissipation. Head retention is pretty decent. It's evening out. It's stayed fairly consistent. It's definitely a bright yellow. Definitely entering into that pale yellow category on the SRM scale. For those of you who actually care about the SRM scale, I personally don't. I definitely get like on the aroma, I get a lot of spiciness. I think that maybe that comes from the wheat. Maybe there was some rye in there or something. I don't know. It could be coming from the hops, but I don't get like a hoppy spiciness. I definitely don't get any hop aroma in this. I get the orange, and maybe it's the coriander they used. Yeah, I get a lot of wheat breadiness notes, bread crust, pie crust, and then I get some kind of spice in it. Not like a cooking spice. It almost is like when you get the spicier hops, but it doesn't. It's definitely not hops. I can tell it's not hops. And then the orange comes in there and really, it comes in there really smooth. It just makes the nose quite pleasant, in my opinion. So this is an interesting wit beer. It's got, it's leaning more towards the medium viscosity. It's not the thinnest beer in the world. There's definitely carbonation and bubbles going on in there, but it's not like a soda or anything. A light carbonation, if you will. I get like, I think there's more than just orange in here, or maybe they used a unique style of orange. I get some kind of spiciness in there. I couldn't tell you what that spiciness is. I'm just gonna be on the safe side and just attribute that to maybe that's the coriander I'm tasting. And then when I first sipped on it, I wanted to say there was some pineapple in this. At first, it definitely comes off as more of a tart, sour pineapple flavor, but I think they're using a unique style of orange. I think that's what I'm gonna go with. I'm not a beer expert or a beer judge, so yeah, I think it's a pretty standard wit beer. I really like it though. What would I rate it as? I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5. It's a solid A. If I was really gonna nitpick and get down in there, I would give it a 94, 95 out of 100. I wouldn't lean it more towards world class. I don't like the malt they use. I think that's where, you know, what sets it apart from not being a world-class beer, for me anyways. maybe a little more viscosity, a little just tinge thicker, and then maybe a different malt or something. But I definitely like that spiciness that makes it stand apart from other wit beers I've ever had. And then I love the choice of orange or tangerine or mandarin they use. It's definitely a great beer. Wit beers in general are great for beginners. I think they're really great for getting people that want to dip their toes into craft beer, because they're really light and easy. There's almost no hop presence in a lot of wit beers. The hop presence in a wit beer kind of varies brewery to brewery, but for the most part, they're really not, they don't have a lot of hop presence at all. And you'll find the coriander, if it's not overpowering, and the citrus that usually goes into these wit beers, to be quite enjoyable. Actually, you know, and other than rookies, I recommend wit beers to anybody, really. I think that orange and the coriander has enough to pull in your tropical IPA crowd, you know, the people that like their citrus IPAs. And then I think for a summertime beer, maybe you'd want to drink a wit beer instead of a Miller Lite. So the seasonal drinking crowd, I think wit beers are good for too. But yeah, that's all I got. 4.5 out of 5, kind of leaning more towards A-, but it's still an A beer. Fantastic brew from Cigar City Brewing. Until next time, guys, cheers.